Hi, welcome to the Naptime Podcast. I'm Emily Schoolfield, and happy Monday. Today we are going to be talking about the mama manager and having a side hustle while also having kids at home or just being a mom in general. Today we're going to have Robin Angiak on sharing her story, and she's a hardworking mama of 6 kids and a successful bookkeeping business owner as well. So she's got a lot of experience under her belt that she's ready to share with us. So Robin, if you're available or ready, if you could just share with us a little bit about your family and your kiddos and how you all got started.
Yeah, thanks, Emily. I'm very excited to be here. And I actually have 6 children, but they are mostly grown now. So I'm kind of on the other end of this side hustle parenting. And really the bookkeeping business is more of a very full-time business. But I spent a lot of years when they were little with a lot of side hustles. And it was great. I really enjoyed it. I think there were definitely challenges and a lot of things I learned along the way.
So when would you say did you start working in addition to being a mom?
Actually, I was working when I became a mom. So when I had my first daughter, I was working at I stayed home. Really, I had trouble with that and started working again when she was about maybe almost a year old and was pregnant with my second one. And really, until we had our 4th child, I worked jobs that allowed me to have my kids with me. So I did some like assistant managing of apartments and things like that. And so I really actually struggled with the transition from working to being a stay-at-home mom full-time. So we did a lot of different things. My husband and I worked opposite hours usually. So one of us was always with our kids. And we did have all our kids in 6 years, which I always refer to it as my roaring 20s because 6 kids from 20 to 29 is a lot. So 6 kids under 9 years old. And it wasn't until we had our 4th one. And I think my oldest was like 5.5 when I had my 4th one, 5.5, almost 6. And so we were very busy.
And then what kind of jobs did you have during this season? Were they more stay at home or did they kind of more involve being outside of the home?
Yeah, they were actually kind of both. So one of the first job when I got married, when I got married, I actually had I think 3 part-time jobs and the 4th one that I did sometimes. So I found that if I worked part-time jobs, I got paid more. So I just had multiple part-time jobs. And this is back in the mid 90s. And I think I was making like 15 an hour because I did all part-time jobs. So I doubled my wage. It was pretty great, actually. But then what I did was I worked as a manager for an assisted living. It wasn't really assisted living home, but it was an elder's home. But I could have my daughter with me in the office. And then I worked later at an apartment complex where I was managing. So we always kind of got housing with my job, which made it, kind of worth it. My husband was going to school later. But I did have to work full time, a little over full time actually at the second one. And that was harder. I will say that was a lot harder. I actually would cry when I went to work. I'd be nursing my babies and my husband would bring them in to nurse. My boss was great about that, but it was very challenging. And sometimes I am sad it took me so long to be okay being a full-time homemaker. That was very hard for me, but also sometimes I wish maybe I had picked up on that a little quicker. So grateful for Jesus' grace.
Yes, it's definitely a transition for sure to go from being a part of the workforce to kind of being at home all the time. I know I felt a shock with that. Just going from being around people constantly to just me staring at this baby that couldn't respond. It was really weird. And I would get very excited when Cade would come home because there's finally an adult that I could have a real conversation with. But no, that transition I feel like can be difficult for everybody. But I know personality wise too, you've shared with me just how much you love to work and to be a part of a working atmosphere or working on all these hobbies and things. So the transition to motherhood was a little harder in that too. Just that you kind of had to learn how to disconnect from that a little bit. So I do have a question in regards to that. What do you think inspired you or kind of helped you transition from the multi-jobs to kind of more of the stay-at-home mom being the center of your focus and then adding in your own businesses that you did on the side?
Yeah, I honestly, I had like a gigantic transformative situations with Jesus, quite honestly. Like I really was very destructive in my life. And I feel like it was interesting. I feel like Jesus invited me into this place with my children that really gave me the room I needed to grow as a person. Um, and I don't, when I tell my story of motherhood, I don't think it's for everybody. You know what I mean? Like everybody has different personalities and different gifts and different callings. But I feel like for me personally, I thought I would have 2 kids at 30 and I had 6 by 29. And I thought I would own businesses. And instead I was 100% full-time mom for almost, right as of now, like almost 20 years, which is a crazy thought. And I'll never forget like looking at my oldest daughter in her crib and just like having a freak out moment because commitment was an issue for me. And I was like, wow, I'm a mom forever. There's no going back. And I just remember I was a brand new Christian at the time. And the Lord was like, yeah, but just you're a mom one day at a time. And I was like, okay, I can handle that. I can do this one day at a time. And it was interesting. Like I totally was in love with my daughter. I really loved being pregnant. I really loved motherhood. But I just really struggled with thinking I was valuable enough and worthy enough as a person without having a job. I would constantly introduce myself and be like, yeah, I used to do this and this. Nobody asked. I just would tell them, I used to have a real job. I honestly was like always managing. I was always like, kind of leadership positions, even though I was so young. And so it was just very hard to go from that to being a mom. And I do think when I came home though, after my 4th daughter, she was about a year old, and we bought our house kind of out of town, out of the city. And I was home and my husband was working, and it was relieving to not have all the pressure, but I created so much pressure on myself. And so I was, and money was very tight because it was just on a single income. We had this house payment we'd never had. It was very challenging. And I think for me, it was just such also a spiritual growth and awakening in my own heart that I was having with the Lord, that's actually what made the transition possible. And also recognizing that he gave me so much space, with it to do, which I truly treasured.
And I definitely think for me, I mean, like you're talking success, right? When you're looking at a job and you accomplish these things and maybe you move up the ladder, like that feels to me and myself very successful. And so that's kind of how I measured my worth. I would put it into a lot of those kinds of things. So when I became a mom, being at home and success was getting the dishes done, it just wasn't the same adrenaline high, I guess, for me as, finishing some big project at work or something like that. And that's an adjustment I've definitely had to make because it's just a whole nother mindset. And I think that's where we're forced to kind of sit back and rely on God and really see our worth in him instead, and recognizing how important it is to be a mom, because when you've been doing everything else for so long, it's totally a transition to get to that step next.
Totally. Yeah, I 100% agree. And also I would say too, like, I think we need to, when we become parents, I think we redefine success in so many ways, because I really, really struggled with having so many kids, and just, that it was really the commitment issue. I just struggled with my children. I loved having them, but I really struggled with like feeling like maybe there was a loss, or maybe I was missing out, or maybe I was behind, and I was so young, so I kind of feel like I was taken out of the game. We couldn't save money. You know what I mean? Like there were so many thoughts. Yeah. And it's funny because kind of like running alongside that, I had so many friends who didn't have children until their early to mid 30s. And but also like there was just a lot of divorce going on. There's a lot of broken relationship with kids going on. But I didn't, I see that now in retrospect, 26 years later. But I didn't see it when I was in my 20s. And so you feel like you're behind because everyone else is going to school and getting their degrees. Everybody else is, starting in these different businesses. And
Mm-hmm.
it really wasn't until, oh my gosh, I'd have these older ladies that would be like, you're doing the most important thing now. This is your first ministry. And I didn't grow up in church, I grew up in a actually very feminist kind of um, culture. And so I just would hear stuff like that and kind of gag inside, which is a totally horrible response. But I just was like, I
Mm-hmm.
know my kids are important. Like, you don't have to tell me. And it wasn't until probably like, I don't know, I think I'd been home probably 3 or 4 years, and I was reading a book, and it was by Heidi Baker, but this book, it was called Stopping for the One. And I just remember, like, as a new Christian and wanting to do missions and different stuff and feeling like we're never going to be able to do that. We can barely pay our bills. And I just remember the Lord, I was like, well, who do I stop for? And he's like, you have 6 little people in this house to stop for. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember really having a revelation at that moment that when I stop for my child, I am stopping for the one. And it really kind of reworked my brain and reworked my heart to realize that, these ladies were right. This is my first mission field. And also, that whole saying of if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. Like I truly could get out of bed and change the tone for the day depending on how I got out of bed. So
Yeah.
there's just, and your kids, honestly, your kids reflect you back to you so fast in life. I mean, I don't care how young your child is. They do things because they're mimicking you. But when they start talking and they talk to your husband the way you talk to your husband, you're like, oh, that doesn't sound very good. I should stop
Yeah.
that.
No, for
And I
sure.
need to reword that. I always say that maybe my eye rolling and my head bobbing and my attitude needs a little check there. So,
No, it's so true. Seeing how much Valerie already mimics me at 1 year old, it just blows my mind how aware she is of what's going on around her. Um, but one of the things that you did share that I think is a great point is just the dying to self. We talk about when we become Christians, we die to ourselves and we learn to be more Christ-like and to lean on Him and become more like Him. And then once you get married, you have to die to yourself again because now you're like, okay, well now I gotta, support this man and work in this relationship together. And then you have kids, and then you have to die to yourself again because you have this little dictator that you have to take care of constantly. And I think that is such a journey for any mom. And I feel like it's such a cool, unique experience too, to just really get to embrace the grace that we get from God and to realize how much He loves us as His children by learning how to love our own and how much we love our own.
yeah. And I think too, Emily, like I would add one thing to that saying, because it is a true saying that we die to ourselves, and there are real things that that we choose to put down. But I would say more often than not, the stuff that dies shouldn't be there anyway. Like the stuff that's died is the stuff I actually didn't want. I didn't want this. I didn't want the selfish Robin anyway. She was not kind or loving. And so I feel like, like it is true, but it's also like this beautiful crucible of it's Jesus using this opportunity that you will never be more motivated. Like your children are so motivating, and it's just such a motivating like container to be molded really by God's love and His grace. So yeah, all the dying is stuff that just shouldn't, it's weeds in our life typically. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great point. Here, let me see. Sorry. I've got my question list here. So now that we've heard, I mean, I'm sure it's going to be a constant road that you're on of your heart being changed through Christ and all these things that you're learning as you raise your kids. But what point do you think the door was kind of open to you again to start pursuing business opportunities or to start bringing those kind of things back into your day-to-day?
yep. So I would say I don't think the door actually opened. So I personally had a specific word from the Lord to not work for other people. And our money was so tight. Like there was a few periods where we couldn't buy food. I couldn't get glasses. We were living on $20-$30 a week for 8 people's food. It's insane. I mean, I know there's a lot of inflation now, but that was nothing back then too. And it's not much. And so our financial situation was very stressful. And I so many times would like look for jobs and fill out applications online or like write it up on the computer. And then the Lord would remind me that's not, for the season. And so I would say I pushed a lot of doors open. I never actually applied, but because I felt like God's word was specific not to work for other people where they could control my time with my family, that, I was still free to do some things. So I've done like scrapbooking and air purify. What have I not done? Like what kind of MLM have I not done? Yeah. Even when Annie was little, in that one short year, like I think I didn't work for like 8 months or something. I think I did Avon. Like I think I've done everything. And, I had some success with some things, but the truth is that that's definitely not my kind of business. And I think that, I don't know, I think there was always something going on. Like my husband would go commercial fishing and I would do garage sales or whatever just to, make money for food while he was gone until we got paid. And there's a lot of stuff like that, like we homeschooled as well. So there was some cost with that. We were actually independent, so we didn't have any other money coming in for that. And so we're just very creative. And I would say that, I'm pretty creative. I actually like making money. I think it's fun. And I know that sounds silly, but I think for other business moms listening, it won't sound silly, but it is fun to make money. It's fun to serve people. It's fun to come up with ways to make money of things that you like doing. But I definitely was limited in time with my kids. So anything I did was like very well organized, because 6 kids and you're homeschooling, like there's not a lot of breathing room in there. Just, keeping people alive, fed, clothed, and clean is hard.
Yeah. No, and I'm sure priorities and like task management is something that you had to like just run into with having 6 kids so close together.
Yeah. Well, I'm also very ADHD mom over here. So I don't know. I sometimes think it was my superpower, but it was also like every year we'd homeschool, I'd ask my kids, how can I help you this year? And they're like, can we just know what's going on? So I did develop, I am a very high functioning ADHD person.
There you go. I do want you to share, if you can, your business that you did with groceries and shipping those out to the different villages and areas. If you could just share a little bit about that and kind of where it came from. I think it's a great story.
Yeah, absolutely. So by the time my kids were older at this point, I think my youngest was probably 4. So my oldest would have been about 13. And I started doing actually, I tore my Achilles is what happened, and it completely ripped in half. And my husband's job went bankrupt all at the same time, the place where he was working. And so he got laid off. My father-in-law had a stroke and was living with us. And I couldn't put any weight on my leg for 6 weeks. It was kind of a life-altering season. And we had some family members who, I grew up in Village, Alaska, and it's very remote. You have to ship all your food in. And so they had asked me years ago, we had done something like this with another family member and shipped groceries out once a week. But my husband had done it, and it was kind of before the internet was like really popular for shopping. And so I built a website that basically had Costco in it. And once a week we would ship out groceries. And so that was, I built the website when I was on bed rest for that. And then that was my rehab, actually, was pushing this. We were shipping about 3,000 pounds a week by the time 6 years later when we finally closed it down, and sometimes up to 5,000 pounds a week of food that was fresh and frozen. And so, yeah, it was a lot of work. It was great. I'd take my kids in with me. They worked with me. We learned all sorts of random things, like tape doesn't stick below 10 degrees. And so we had to buy special tape and boxes, and we would pack out in the parking lot. We were like, Costco pros. And it was fun, though. It was very fun. It paid for gas and food. It got me out of the house once a week, twice a week in the summer. And we really enjoyed it. The only reason we stopped doing it was because we started doing submissions as a family, and we just couldn't be gone for that long. And I really never did my pricing right. There was a lot of things I learned in that business. So actually, everything I've ever done prepared me for the business I own now. It's pretty amazing, and especially all the different businesses that I was part of and owned and tried to run, and all the things gave me a lot of where I thought I was behind ended up being I was being perfectly prepared for what I've done, and what I thought we were behind, God has like miraculously accelerated in my business, which has been amazing and mind-blowing. Obedience always pays off. That's all I'm going to say. If he tells you to do something, just do it. because it always pays off. It might take you 26 years to figure it out, but he's already figured it out. So that's kind of the thing, you know? But yeah, so definitely the grocery business was definitely one of my favorite that I ran, and did run it the longest. Actually, it was definitely the most profitable of all the ones I did, but I loved it because I had control of it, you know? And my kids got to do it with me. You know what I mean? Like we were very much could, you know, go find all the fun lunch spots together and have time with each of my older kids that would help me. So yeah, we had a great time.
Well, and then how do you think that experience for them kind of made an impact on their vision of being a business owner and just entrepreneurial skills in general?
Yeah, I think they saw me try so many jobs over, like so many businesses over the years. And like I have a whole soapbox on the whole, are you making yourself a job or are you building a business thing? That's a whole other conversation. But yeah, I think it really impacted them. I think everything about our lifestyle did, actually. You know, we just kind of lived life the way we wanted to. I mean, we did our school, we did, you know, my husband had regular jobs, but we also, we wanted to spend time with our kids when we had them. Like we wanted a big family, and we also didn't want anyone else to raise them. You know what I mean? Like we really wanted to be with our children and make memories and do things. And so we kind of made choices, you know, that made us be creative on how we made money. And so my kids it's interesting because they are much more independent, thinking about how they're going to live their lives. And so multiples of them have businesses. And it's funny, we do like this tax time each year because now I do taxes and bookkeeping. So we do a Zoom where we all do their business taxes and I help them with bookkeeping. So bookkeeping for small businesses can be a pain. So that's been really fun to do with them. And yeah, and you know, they've seen me like try and fail and cry. You know, there are times when I was so sick when we were doing the grocery business, but you know, because I didn't build a business that other people could run, you know, that was kind of like made myself a job. You know, I still had to go when I had a fever, you know, or whatever. It was just really sick. So it didn't really matter. Things had to get done. And yeah, so I think my kids saw a lot of that, actually. And I think it was a positive thing.
Yeah, I want to say that I mean, kudos to you for keeping them so involved in all that. I feel like most parents, I mean, we want to protect our kids from the dangers of the world and make sure they're not worried about things that they don't need to be worrying about. But I think that it's very powerful to watch your parents go through these struggles and see them succeed in things, because it's the biggest lesson that you can learn is just within your own home. And especially when you talk about how you wanted to be with the kids and you wanted to be the one taking care of the kids. And I think them being able to see that made a huge impact on their lives. I mean, I know it would for me, and the struggles I saw my parents go through, as far as the divorce goes and just jobs they would go through, those kinds of things, getting to not necessarily be a part of it, but to witness them working through it, I feel like made a huge impact on me and just the way that my brain thinks and how I problem solve. And that's definitely something that I challenge myself to do with Valerie, because, you know, if I'm having a bad day and being pregnant right now, I'm very emotional. So when I cry, I'm like, oh, I don't need Val to see me cry. I'll cry when she takes her nap. When all honesty, her seeing me cry and me just being able to explain, like, yeah, mommy's just sad right now, and her to cuddle me. I'm like, these are just such special moments that I don't need to be blocking out. And I think it's just a really great relationship that God creates. I mean, he knows what he's doing, but to actually be able to live that and witness it is a really cool thing to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I would say too, like, your kids are actually going to be your greatest prayer partners and cheerleaders. I mean, they are the people who are invested in you and your husband's life. Like, and they know it. They intuitively know that. And I think, you know, I feel like my kids really grew up with me as I grew in my faith, because I was such a brand new Christian. I think I'd only been a Christian for less than a year, I think, when I had Annie, my oldest. And so, you know, learning to trust the Lord with things like we just were so poor that, you know, I'd get bills and I would like want to ignore them. Like I wouldn't even want to look at them because I knew we didn't have money. And the Lord would be like, how about you open them up and pray for that bill? You know? And so we would do that as a family. We would pray over our bills. We'd pray over our grocery list. We would pray over, you know, getting clients. And we did it together. And when it was hard, my kids would just pray that I would have more faith, you know, like if I was crying and like felt so constrained because the Lord kept telling me not to go work for other people. I mean, that was a tough thing. And also, like, we were so supportive of their dad, you know, like we'd pray for their dad when he was going to work. I mean, my husband did so many jobs that were just horrible jobs. He wasn't appreciated. He was treated like crap. Sorry, I don't know if I can use that word on your podcast.
You're good.
But
we'll bleep you out. It's Robin.
bleep
Watch
me
out.
out. It's not that bad. Don't bleep me out. Anyway, no, but it just like, I just was so appreciative of my husband. And I think my kids were so appreciative of their dad. And it really, I think like we're all in it together. And at the same time though, like the money thing, as they got older, there was just so many things we couldn't do. And I know my husband and I, it's funny, like you get so many money issues, whether you have money or don't have money. I feel like money's just an issue. You know, it brings up so many issues of the heart. And so in the last, I would say, since I've run this business and we've had more money, and, you know, like we have kids moving out, so there's just more money. My husband and I have been going through a lot of, honestly, just like writing down all our regrets, writing down and praying through all of our things we were sad we hadn't done, things, you know, we wish we had in parenting, because also like kids are leaving. So it's a whole new season, and there is an end to your time with Valerie. So, you know, there will be things that you will be sad happened and didn't happen. And you just, it's really important to process those things, because I don't want them to like follow into my kids' relationship, or I don't want to like try to get that from them once they're adults, you know, with families. And so we've been trying really hard to guard our hearts and be prepared and ready for this stage. And one of the things we actually did, and we process a lot of things as a family, but we totally had this like money time where we just apologized to our kids, you know, for the things that we didn't have and the things we did have. And it, you know, and they had stuff that they needed to get off of their chest, and like bad, you know, money habits they had or things they thought about money. It was a really great time. It was hard. It was like almost 3 hours of roughness, but also, you know, we were able to pray with each other, and just so that I just didn't want my kids to leave and be burdened by the different extremes of their childhood, you know, and the money issues, because I think that they will have so much more success anyway. But that could stop them, you know, that could really hinder them. And there's just so many ways we self-sabotage and don't trust the Lord and don't listen because of how things have been in our life or not been. So yeah, and that kind of comes with business though. I think business really pushes that to the forefront, because, you know, if you're desperate in business, people aren't going to come work with you. It doesn't matter if you don't have any money in the bank. It actually is whether or not you can provide a service for them, you know. So it's interesting, but not having money in the bank affects how we approach people, how we treat people, you know. And so it's just, there's a lot of good discipline in our faith and in how we run our business, and also how we parent, you know, in the midst of that. Like, how will we behave on the day when, you know we have no money in the bank and we have these bills due? Will we be sharp and, you know, snotty at our kids, or will we be generous and just ask them to pray with us? You know, like, we got a lot on our mind today. Can you guys pray? Like, I really want to trust the Lord enough to not let it affect my behavior with you. Like, I don't want to lose this day with my kids because I'm so consumed with this stress.
Yeah. And what a cool testimony to have too. I mean, to be kind of on the other end where now the kids are growing up and more adults, to hear their stories too. Because obviously for me, I mean, I know that day's coming, but I try not to think about it yet because she's still so little. But no, I'm really glad that you shared that. I think that's great. And I think that can be an inspiration to all the mamas who are just kind of stuck or feel like they're in a tough spot, to realize, you know, how your kids can be a part of that versus separated, and how your attitude is going to be the number one effect on them, which I think is just a great reminder. What would you say is kind of the biggest advice you can give to the mom who's maybe at home right now and looking at starting up her own little business at home?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and I'm even learning this when very few kids home, is that, and I think I did this with my grocery business, is just give yourself permission to set up a business that works around your life. You don't have to have, you don't have to do things because everyone else does them in a business. You don't have to have certain hours. You don't have to have certain offers. You don't have to do anything actually that anyone else is doing. You just need to meet a need in your business for a client or a customer in a way that works for your life. And I think it's very easy to get sucked into what we think everybody else is doing, and it's totally unnecessary. So if your life is, you only have these 2 hours, then you just don't let anyone else in those other hours. They only get to come in those 2 hours, and that's okay. Like, there is permission for that. And I think that today's business world is so incredibly customizable with everything you can do remote, everything you can do, you know what I mean? Like, there's just so much. And I honestly would almost encourage moms to build businesses that don't require like one-on-one client work when your kids are little, and do something that is reselling, like it resells on its own. And that way you're doing more of the like pushing content or pushing maybe admin stuff or marketing in your 2 hours, and less on the like one-on-one work. Because I do think like you don't want to sacrifice the time with your kids. And so if you need to make money, you know what I mean? Or you really want to be building something, I would focus more on the things that don't require the one-on-one time when you're, really focusing on parenting.
Yeah, and I know that you talked to last time we spoke regarding the monetary side of things, because for me, when Val was first born, I felt like I had no free time ever, because I just constantly had this baby on me that I either needed to feed or clean or, just wipe the puke off of myself. But as soon as she hit that 6-month mark, I had a lot more free time where she kind of self-entertained, and her nap schedule was on a schedule. So then I was able to create, the nap time podcast during the time she was napping. And I think one of the biggest things, I'm not making money right now, but even just the process of trying to put something like this together on my own and to manage that time while having her, I feel like has taught me a lot that I can use for the future when I get to the point where, I'm ready to start a business that I can kind of put more time into and focus on trying to make a little bit of money as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that setting your goals is really important. Like, if you have a real money need, then you need to, I would work backwards from that. Like, be like, all right, so if I need an extra $500 to $1,000 a month, like this will be life-changing for my family, then, what skills, what things do I have that I can offer? How can I offer them? Do they have to be one-on-one? Can I record and sell something? How many people would I have to sell to? Like, I would just do the nitty-gritty math part. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I know it's not the sexy part of business, but it's also, if you start out with your end goal in mind, the other thing that happens is you'll know when you reach it. And there will always be the temptation to multiply it. But a lot of times what happens in a lot of businesses I work with, people will multiply it and they find that there's somewhere they never wanted to go. And so I think just being really honest with yourself and with the Lord, and what is the goal? I feel like you actually can achieve it so much faster than you think you can. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's kind of like, we don't realize how fast it can happen. And so you just need to take yourself seriously and be like, okay, and adapt. You're going to put your stuff out there and people may or may not like it, or they'll like an iteration of it, or a different variation. And I would go with that. But it doesn't have to be, equal to your husband's pay, if that's what, you know what I mean? Like, it feels like, and that's really untying your worth from what you make. Really, you have a goal, you know what I mean? Like it's not about your worth. You're just achieving this goal because you either want to do that, or, you know what I mean? Like, and that's perfectly fine. If you just want to make money, that's totally okay. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's not a bad thing. No. So there's nothing wrong with that. And it doesn't have to be for some, wonderful motive other than you enjoy making money. That's also okay. I had to get permission. That was a long time coming for me. But also, like, I also do something I love and I serve it, people in a way that's needed. So I think that's okay. And I do think, though, for young moms, it is hard because we want to be this, I don't know, hashtag girl boss, or, build our empire. And I have come to realize I don't want an empire. That's actually like a real headache when I think about an empire. Not necessarily what I want. but I do want to provide certain things. I do have goals, and just empire is not my goal. That's someone else's goal.
No, absolutely. And I think that's a great reminder too, that it's not a one size fits all situation. And when you're debating, starting up a business or just starting a side hobby or something like that, to really just kind of balance where you're at and not try to, I guess, equate yourself to either your husband's salary or maybe what he's bringing home or even anybody else, but instead to focus on, what can you do and what are you trying to achieve? And I think that's a great reminder just to kind of come back to center and be like, okay, why am I doing this? I know Annie talked a lot too about going, 5 Whys Deep, I believe. And when you're making those kinds of decisions. So no, I think that's great. And I really appreciate you sharing your story with us today. Hopefully there's a mom out there that this reaches out to and gives you some inspiration, and also just a great story to share of recognizing that it's not going to be this black and white or rainbow happy situation necessarily, that, it's going to take work. But hearing how successful you've been and now running your current bookkeeping business, Line and Ledger, I know that it's been quite the road for you, but you're in a good place now. Do you want to share a little bit about that business at all, or how you are feeling currently? Or
Yeah, well, I started it. My husband and I kind of took different, we got to this place where we had gotten rid of the grocery business. He had laid down all the businesses he was working for. He had kind of stepped away from them. We did missions for a couple of years, and honestly, it really wreaked havoc on our finances, which I didn't realize it could get worse. It really could. And we just were at this place where we were like, wow, we really kind of can't get much lower. So let's, where do we want to be in 10 years? I'm in my 40s now. He's going to be in his mid 50s. And I just really, in 10 years from now. So I just was like, wow, what do you want to do? And my husband is an amazing artist, and he's been doing these remodels and bathrooms and, stuff for ever since we've been married to take care of our family. And he was like, I'd really like to do my art. So has been doing that for almost 5 years. And then I started a bookkeeping and tax business. Really funny, really wrestled with the Lord. I also have taught art and really love the creative side, but the Lord was like, I want you to do this. And I had another wrestling, not very different from when I had my kids. And I was like, this sounds horrible. I hate doing the admin. And what's so funny is I trusted him. He asked me to do it. Do you trust me? The same way when I was looking at Annie in the crib all those years ago. And I was like, okay, I trust you. That turned out really well. I have a great relationship with my kids. And everything I ever wanted was in motherhood in those years. And I didn't even know I wanted it. So I was like, I can trust him. He knows me better than I know me. And honestly, this business has been everything I wanted in a business, and really has been spectacularly great in so many ways, so challenging. And I would say having a business is very much like having a baby. And it comes with all of its own learning curves and stressors, and the responsibility is solely on you, and it can consume you. You need an identity outside of it. All of the things, motherhood perfectly prepared me for my business. I did not expect that. And also has helped me really define what matters in my life. And that has been a huge gift. And I was talking before about saying how far behind I felt. And really just within a few years, my business has the same equity that my house has. And that's really just a God thing, to be obedient, to not work for other people, not do these things for so many years and feeling like, man, I am missing out. I'm so far behind. We don't have retirement. We don't have any of these things. And then the Lord just to be obedient and, follow him has been really mind-blowing. Although it shouldn't be. I should know better by now, but it is.
Yeah, we all should.
But yeah. I would say though, starting a business really is like having another baby. That is just, you need to keep that in mind. It's going to have its own little life.
No, that's a really interesting way to put it, but it does help me kind of get an idea of what you're describing. So totally. Well, thank you again, Robin, so much for being on with us today. I really appreciate you sharing your story. And I think that's about all I have for today. So I'm going to go ahead and end us here. And for all the listeners, I will see you next Monday.